Yellowstone Season 5, Episode 12. What does counting Coup mean? Yellowstone Season 5, Episode 12 is entitled Counting Coup, demonstrating how important this concept is to the story. Throughout Counting Coup, Case, Luke Grimes, focuses on finding out more details about who had killed John and getting vengeance, while Beth, Kelly Riley, is sidetracked by Yellowstone Season 5. Episode 12's unnecessary death from her mission of confronting Jamie, Wes Bentley. About his role, Case talks with a contact and learns the name of the man who was behind the assassination. After learning this, Case again needs to leave his family in the dark to carry out his plans, promising Monica only that he would be careful and would return home safely. Case's actions continue the investigation arc that had begun with Yellowstone's medical examiner in Season 5, Episode 11, though at this point he knows what happened to John and is beginning to confront the people responsible in order to get vengeance. Once Case learns that Grant Horton is responsible for John's death, he tracks him down and slips into his car while Horton is taking his young daughter home from soccer practice. Case's decision to hold the little girl at gunpoint and scream at her that she'd better be scared seems out of character for him. However, it is the best way for him to put Grant on notice that he knows what he did and is prepared to take revenge. Although Case threatens Horton, he does not kill him, though he makes it clear he could take him and his whole family out if he wanted to. Instead, toward the end of the confrontation, Case hits Horton and tells him, "Where I come from, we call that counting Coup. That means I took a piece of your soul, and I'm gonna keep it." This idea is clearly important to both Case and Mo. Mo brings plenty, as the latter makes a point of asking the Dutton if he counted Coup when he picks him up after his encounter with Grant. Counting Coup is an indigenous custom via Buffalo Bill Center of the West. Many tribes use it to humiliate their enemies rather than killing them outright. Instead of fighting to the death, they touch their adversary with the coup stick, often hitting them over and over with it. Warriors who successfully count coup are considered especially brave. Thus, the fact that Mo wants Case to engage in this custom demonstrates his belief that John's killer is so unworthy that he doesn't even want to bother with killing him. Instead, he would rather Case count Coup than waste energy on eliminating Grant. Mo's interest in this revenge scheme in Yellowstone is a testimony to his respect for John, who he worked with often despite the friction between the indigenous population and the ranchers. Now that Yellowstone's John Dutton is dead, Mo wants to fight for vengeance, showing that John was important to him. Additionally, Case has struggled with his identity as a white man married to an indigenous woman throughout the series. Thus, Mo's willingness to work with him demonstrates that he fully accepts Case as an honorary member of his tribe. In the depths of Yellowstone, a show known for its riveting exploration of power, loyalty, and the harsh realities of ranch life, Season 5, Episode 12 presents a profound moment of reflection. The title, Counting Coup, draws its inspiration from an old Native American tradition, which is rich in symbolism and history. But this episode is not merely about honoring tradition. It intertwines the past with the present, showing how ancient codes of conduct still influence modern-day decisions on the ranch. The meaning of counting coup. In Native American culture, counting coup was a term used to describe the act of achieving a symbolic victory over an enemy without causing harm. It was a measure of courage, skill, and respect. To count coup meant that a warrior could approach an enemy, touch them, and then retreat unharmed, showing that they had the upper hand. This act was seen as more honorable than outright killing an adversary, as it demonstrated both restraint and strength. In the context of Yellowstone, this concept has layers of complexity. The men and women who fight for the land and the legacy of the Dutton family have become modern-day warriors, facing off against enemies who threaten the ranch's existence. But it's not always about bloodshed. Sometimes the battle is won with words, with strategy, or through subtle maneuvers that make their point without ever drawing a weapon. A parallel to the Dutton struggles. The episode's title underscores the internal and external conflicts that have been building throughout the series. John Dutton, the patriarch of the family, has spent much of his life fighting for control of his land, his legacy, and the sovereignty of his family. And yet in this episode, we see him take a different route, one that echoes the very essence of counting Coup. Instead of reacting with brute force, John contemplates using strategy and influence to maintain his power, without crossing into the extreme that could end in devastation. This shift in approach is also mirrored in the behavior of his children, especially Case and Beth. Case, caught between his loyalties to the ranch and his Native American heritage, finds himself grappling with a moral dilemma: how to protect his family and their land while honoring the traditions of the people who originally inhabited it. His journey represents the delicate balance of counting Coup, as he learns that victory doesn't always come from the battle itself, but from understanding the power of restraint. Beth, on the other hand, is an embodiment of both warrior and strategist. Though her approach is often harsh and unrelenting, there are moments in this episode where we see a different side of her. Beth's realization that sometimes the greater victory comes in letting others make mistakes rather than crushing them outright hints at her own understanding of counting Coup. Her growing understanding of strategy and patience marks an important evolution in her character. The significance of the battle for land. At its heart, Yellowstone is a show about land, the power that comes with owning it, the history it holds, and the connections that bind people to it. In Episode 12, we see the Duttons facing an enemy that threatens the very essence of their legacy. Land developers, corporate greed, and politicians who seek to tear apart the fabric of the land for profit. The Duttons, however, are not simply fighting for the land. They are fighting for its history, for the stories embedded in its soil. This battle parallels the notion of counting Coup. The land is sacred, not just because it is valuable, but because it tells the story of the people who have lived on it, fought for it, and built their lives around it. When the Duttons refuse to sell, it's not just about money or power. It's about preserving something intangible, the heritage of the land. And in a way, this is their own form of counting Coup. They are claiming victory over the forces that seek to destroy that heritage, but they do so in a way that upholds their values, rather than succumbing to the cruder instincts of violence or destruction. The tension with the modern world. Counting Coup also serves as a metaphor for the struggle between old-world values and the harsh realities of the modern world. As the Duttons continue to fight for their land, they must grapple with the inevitable encroachment of the modern world, corporate interests, politics, and the law. These forces represent the enemy that the Duttons must navigate. But unlike the warriors of old, who could touch their enemies in the heat of battle and walk away, the Duttons cannot afford to simply retreat. This is most evident in the power struggle between John Dutton and the political figures who have begun to circle like vultures around the ranch. The game has changed, and now victory is not so easily won. The Duttons must use their influence, their power, and their cunning to count Coup on a grand scale. Their victory will not come through direct confrontation, but through outsmarting those who wish to take what is rightfully theirs. It's a shift from physical power to intellectual and emotional endurance, something the Duttons are still learning to wield effectively. The evolution of the Duttons' legacy. Throughout the episode, we see the Dutton family members reflecting on the price of their legacy. The land they fight for is not just dirt and grass. It is the culmination of generations of struggles, triumphs, and sacrifices. The symbolism of counting Coup reflects this evolution. It's no longer about physical violence, but about outlasting the forces that seek to break them down. For John Dutton, this means finally understanding that victory may not always require a confrontation. His legacy is built not just on his actions, but on the way he ensures that the land will live on in the hands of future generations. The strategy of restraint and precision, of counting Coup, becomes a way for the Duttons to preserve their legacy without falling into the destructive trap of violence that has consumed so many of their adversaries.